All right, Shalom. You reached the He Prayed channel. My name is Isaac Mawar. But first and foremost, I want to say, call Halayim, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Harakach Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, 7:13:19, where I learned this truth from and who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. The 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So it's not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah in his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah Ba'ashim Harakach Wadash for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Kashah Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah Ba'ashim Harakach Wadash allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the Bakiyar. So the title of this video is going to be 844. So let's go to it. Because, you know, the most popular verse in the scriptures dealing with 844 is John. St. John chapter 8, verse 44. But the elect are going to magnify 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 44. This is 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 44. If thy people go out to battle, and are we not going out to battle? You know, now it's not a physical battle per se, but a spiritual one. You know, it informs us in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 8. It says, therefore wait ye, you, upon me. That me is Yahweh Shah, man. You know, so unless you're blessed with those spiritual powers, you're instructed to wait upon Yahweh Shah to deliver you. It says, saith Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey, which the prey is these Edomites. For my determination is to gather the nations, which he's going to gather the nations for World War III, and to destroy them and their militaries, that I may assemble the kingdoms to pour upon them my indignation, his righteous anger, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. And what is he jealous over? He's jealous over his people, right? And who is his people? You so-called blacks, Latinos, and the indigenous of America, right? So going back to First Kings chapter 8, verse 44, it says, if thy people go out to battle against their enemy, and who is our enemy? It's these Edomites, man, and these heathen nations, right? Go to Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 9. It says, my heritage, which is Israel, to Zion, the monument, is unto me as a speckled bird, right? A bird with many colors, right? Because our people are diverse in appearance. It says the birds round about are against her, and the other birds that are round about are these heathen nations, and they're against you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous. Come ye, assemble all the beasts of the field, come to devour. And that's what they have done unto us, man. They put us under subjection and oppression, starting with the nation of Edom, who's the so-called white man who started calling himself white in 1681 in Virginia due to the Bacon rebellions, right? But going back to First Kings chapter 8, verse 44, it says, whithersoever thou shalt send them and shall pray, which pray means to beg, petition, I think I could say, unto Yahweh toward the city, which that city is Jerusalem, which is the east, which thou hast chosen, and toward the house that I have built for thy name, which if Solomon built the house is dealing with the temple. But now we know that it's not a physical temple, it's a spiritual temple. It says, then hear thou in heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. If they sin against thee, for there is no man that sinneth not, and thou be angry with them, and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captives unto the land of the enemy, far or near. And that's what have happened to our people, man. Our people felt the ire of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, the anger, and therefore he dispersed us in the diaspora, right? Verse 47, it says, yet if they shall bethink themselves in the land whither they were carried captives, and that's what is happening in real time, and has been happening since the 350 years expired in 1969. Our people started, with the elect, then the rest of the 1/3 have think or bethought themselves. It says, and repent and turn back from, the ways of this world, which is evil. It says, and make supplication unto thee in the land of them that carried them captives, saying, we have sinned and have done perversely, which perversely means wickedly, and this is all happening in real time, right? Starting with the first fruits, which is the Bakiyar. We have committed wickedness, and so return unto thee with all their mind, because your heart is your mind, and with all their soul, which is basically, what is you, what are your ways, right? In the land of their enemies, and we're in the land of Esau, the Edomites, which led them away captive into slavery, and pray unto thee toward their land, which thou gavest unto their fathers, which is the land of Israel. Yah Shar Allah, he is Prince of the power. It says the city which thou hast chosen, which is Jerusalem, and the house which I have built for thy name, then hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause. And forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion before them who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them. For they be thy people and thy inheritance, which thou broughtest forth out of Egypt, which is, an allegory for the house of bondage. But oftentimes in the scriptures, when it talks about Egypt, it's talking about the ancient Egypt, which is Martazari, which in that captivity we experienced 400 years of slavery. It says, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that thy eyes may be open unto the supplication of thy servant and unto the supplication of thy people Israel, to hearken unto them all that they call for unto thee. Right, and now the modern day Egypt is America. For thou didst separate them from among all the people of the earth to be thy inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses, thy servant, when thou broughtest our fathers out of Mount Azarian, O Yahweh. But going back to the core of this video, it instructs us to pray unto Yahweh, right? And he's going to maintain our cause, because we are about to go out to battle against the enemy, which is basically, these left-handed sided forces, right? So going back to Copilot, the word pray, palel, to intercede, to appeal to the judge, and we're doing that through our mediator, which is Yahweh Shah, to intervene spiritually, right? Battle, Malcolm, war, conflict, divine contest. So, that's what Jacob Trouble is about. It's about war, conflict, divine contest. Let's look up that word contest. This is Etma Online. The word contest from the 16th century. Fight or do battle for. Strive to win or hold. Right? Do battle for. Who are we doing battle for? Our power. Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. And then, of course, ourselves. Right? From French contestere, dispute, oppose. From Latin contestere, litem, to call to witness, bring action. Also it says calling witnesses, to argue in opposition, call into question. Yeah, we're arguing in opposition to this system, to this damn devil, man. To his wickedness and to our own people's wickedness, right? Not sugarcoating it. not being a respecter of persons. It says toward the city, it says our fortified place, watchtower, seat of authority, spiritual overlay. Solomon is describing the elect in the last days, coming, or Slaki, going into the greatest battle ever, Jacob's trouble, and receiving divine intervention when they pray toward the covenant. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 59. Verse 19, it says, so shall they fear the name of Yahweh from the west, which this truth started in the Western hemisphere until it spread throughout the world, and his glory from the rising of the sun, because he's coming from the east, where the sun rises. The sun rises in the east, then sets in the west. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, which that enemy is dealing with Esau and his armies, man. Because that flood goes back to armies. And that's how they move when they do raids. They move with speed, like a flood. Raid, early 15th century, mounted military expedition. Scottish and Northern English form of raid, a riding journey. Also, which this is I'll keep reading. It says the word fell into obscurity by 17th century, but it was revived by Scott, the Lay of the Last Minstrel, 1805, Rob Roy, 1818, with the more extended sense of attack, foray, hostile, or predatory incursion. And that's what it basically is, a predatory incursion. Because they're hunting you niggas, it's like they hunting you people down as if they were the predators and you're the prey. And they're gonna devour a lot of you that ain't calling upon the name, or I should say the names, which the name is Yahweh Shai, but the names are Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, because we have to, in order to get to the Heavenly Father, we have to go through the mediator, which is his son, Yahweh Shai. It says the spirit of Yahweh shall lift up a standard against him, and that standard is men with spiritual powers, man. So, keyword etymology: flood, nehar, overwhelming force, invasion, torrent, standard, nulls, to cause to flee. So with those spiritual powers, you're going to cause them to flee or to make vanish, to supernaturally intervene. And that's the reason why they got the tech that they got, the robots. And that's Most High working on the left-hand side, because despite, those things being contested with conventional means, those things will defeat those conventional means. So even to give glory unto him and then, to his elect, he's going to contest those things with spiritual means. And those spiritual means are going to trump over those carnal means, which is Esau and his weapons. The robots, the guns, the sound wave cannons, the microwave weapons, the heart attack weapons, so on and so forth. And it all requires prayer from a faithful man. All right. Overlay says the standard is spiritual power, divine force, angelic intervention, miraculous escape. Right. And where do you think they got Marvel Comics from? And those different powers that they gave onto those certain superheroes, so called. Got it from the scriptures, man. Are you surprised? It's this word that moves and shakes. Right? This is Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7. It says, alas, for that day is great, which this day is here, but it's going to get worse and worse, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. Yeah, you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous, but not just you. Everybody in the world is going to experience trouble. But he shall be saved out of it. Right. And that's going to be the elect, the 1/3, the word saved, Yasha, delivered from, the nuclear destruction, BIA, the chariots of Israel, the ships, which the world inly calls, UFOs or UAPs. But, this particular ship of deliverance is going to be enormous, gigantic, like a mountain. It says rescue from the hands of our enemies, starting with the so-called white man, who is Esau, and then you heathen nations. It says empowered. We're going to gain power, man. We're going to be immortals and have all power. Made victorious, and we were made victorious 2,000 years ago. When Adonai Noah Yahweh Shai, Hamashiach, sacrificed his life, not only for his sins, but for the sins of the elect, and through the elect, the sins of, the rest of, the nation of Israel. They're going to be made perfect coming back through the loins of the elect. It says, now the scriptural power precepts. It says, now the spiritual power precepts. These are the men of Yahweh Bashan Yahushua performing miraculous feats. Same pattern that will return in Jacob's trouble. So one being supernatural strength. Like how you saw Thanos handle the Hulk, and put his ass in hiding for the damn near the whole movie, man. This is Judges chapter 14, verse 6. It says, and the spirit of Yahweh came mightily upon him. And it's like, even though I tried to explain this before to an individual and they downplayed it, but hopefully, whoever's listening and hears it, hopefully they don't downplay it, but it's like a wind or a wind or a rushing sensation, that takes a hold of you. you can't control anything. You just feel energized, almost like, you're unstoppable, right? It says, and he went and he rent him as he would have rent a kid, which, torn in half, and he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done. And I don't think it says it right here. Which is what he rent was a young lion. And and a young lion are at their peak, you know. So he had power to, he had enough strength to rip it in half, man. And a lion, it weighs like 400 to 600 pounds. So just imagine, man, the strength that Yahweh Bashim Yahushua rested upon Samson. This is Judges chapter 15, verse 14. It says that when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, which the Philistines were Hamites, and the spirit of Yahweh came mightily upon him. So every time the Most High sent that mighty spirit, man, that rushing sensation, that you know, it's it's hard to describe, but it's like, wow, the best way I could describe it is like a rushing sensation. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you downplaying it, but then you individuals that may have experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. It says, and the spirit of Yahweh came mightily upon him, and the cords, because he was tied up, that were upon his arms became as flax. So he broke out of them real easy. That was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. So just imagine, what's going to happen to these, I'll say, armies, or, Esau and his special forces when they come up against, those men with spiritual powers. And I had a lot of dreams about spiritual powers, man. One dream I remember vividly is, which it may or may not still happen. Um, some way, somehow, I ended up with Tazion. No, not Tazion, but Zion and um, uh, sad. I forgot the brother's name, but yeah, I ended up with some members that I used to do the work with, and we were in Fresno, and it jumped from scene to scene because one of the locations was on Bullard and Blackstone, where I had took a light pole, and I had tied um, the city mayor now. What it used to be the police chief to it, and there was a semi truck, oil tanker truck that was speeding toward the intersection. I remember swinging at the truck with him tied to it, and this is all in a dream. You know, like if it was a baseball bat. So just imagine, maybe a 250, 300 pound man tied to the end of a light pole and being swung into an oil tanker. And then, I remember that the part in which he was tied to the pole caved in into the truck's engine bay and sent the truck flying all probably like 100 feet back in the air as if it was, a home run. And then, of course, I don't remember, but I'm guessing that the tank ended up exploding. And then, in the other portion of the dream, you know, I think it was, Yahweh, I'll say it like this: Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah gave me the power to cause a sinkhole on Vaness Street, which is right where we used to teach. And, there was hella cars that ended up in the sinkhole. And then I remember Zion and Dawada, I remember his name, the Wadi Albashim, Rocky Albashim, Salaki Albashim, were with me. And I don't know if they had spiritual powers or not. It was kind of like they were, I'll say like, it was like I was shielding them from, I was protecting them in some sort of way. But I remember, I caused a sinkhole, and I told them, get whatever you can find and get what you need, because it was I don't know if there was people that got caught up in it, but I know that there was resources, so that's one of my dreams that I had in the truth. A dream that I also had in the world was I had the ability to leap like a hind, like a deer. And I was leaping from house to house, which, I'm saying rooftop to rooftop, single level homes. And I was being chased by an army, almost looking like SWAT, all in black. And I remember jumping one house to another house, and as far as I could remember now, because it's been decades, you know, um, that's when the dream ended. So I don't know what happened at the conclusion. Now you can say whatever you want, but that's just the gems that the Most High gave me. Just like I know that King Mashah is King David because of a dream that Yahweh Bashem Yahushua gave me. But going back to AI, it says this is raw spiritual power, not gem strength, not carnal strength, spirit activated power. This is the standard of Isaiah 59 and 19 in ancient form, and who wouldn't want to rip these damn devils apart, man? And I also caught a lot of flack saying that I was going to turn Esau's weapons against him, using spiritual powers, and having those weapons shoot him, which these are things that, if you read the comic books, these are things that Esau took from the comics, and if Yahweh Shem Yahushua is going to use Esau's own weapon against him, why would it be so carnal for us to, cause that weapon to be turned against him without being considered wicked or, So going to First Kings, chapter 18, verse 37. It says, "Hear me, O Yahweh, hear me, that this people may know that thou art Yahweh the Most High, and that thou hast turned their heart or mind back again." Then the fire of Yahweh fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice. So he was able to have Yahweh Bashim Yahushua send fire for him. It says, "In the wood and the stones and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, Yahweh, He is the power. Yahweh, He is the power." You know, and we're gonna be Yahweh shall rout this off. If I get that opportunity, and also if I am bestowed the Spirit to glorify Yahweh Bashim Yahushua in that day, which that day is coming. This is 2 Kings chapter 1, verse 10. It says, "And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I be a man of Yahweh, then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. Right? And, ever since I was removed by Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai and allowed to do my own thing, well, not really my own thing, but do the work in Fresno, you know, um, it's not abnormal to ask Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua for certain things. In this case, Elijah was testing his player card, for so to speak, by saying that if he is a man of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, let fire rain down from heaven, you know? And, sometimes I find myself doing the same things, not raining fire on heaven if, certain other things that I probably won't disclose if I'm a man of, Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, and, he's been answering it, and I'm not here to convince nobody, because who's to say that, you know, you would do the same thing I would do, because a lot of people get put in the same situations and they never had that strong foundation. And we're going to see who had their house built on the rock in these days, man, when they get put through adversity, they get put through humiliation. Are you going to still praise and glorify Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua? If you be a man of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua. It says, "Then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Again, also he sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of the Most High, thus have the king said, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto them, If I be a man of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of the Most High came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So if you be a man of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, he's going to aid you. He's going to guide you. He's going to help you. He's going to keep you in his wisdom. He's going to forgive you of your sins. Right? So going back to AI, it says Elijah demonstrates offensive spiritual power, judgment, fire, divine force. So Elisha control over nature and matter, right? So there's going to be certain brothers that are going to have control over nature and matter. This is 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 14. And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and smote the waters and said, Where is Yahweh, O Elijah? And when he also had smitten the waters, they parted hither and thither, and Elisha went over. Almost like, during the time of King Masha, because he was our king, when he split the Suez Canal. 2 Kings 6 chapter, the 17th verse, it reads, and Elisha prayed. So you got to pray to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua for things, man. Prayer is a heavy thing. Everything that you get is going to come from prayer, right? It says, and said, Yahweh, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And Yahweh opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha, which were, chariots. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto Yahweh and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. So you'll be able to smite these people with blindness, confusion, the same shit that Esau has on the left-hand side with the whole sound wave weapon. But you're going to be using spiritual powers. It says, and Elisha said unto them, This is not the way, neither is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom ye seek. But he led them to Samaria. So that's it on that. Well, no, let me keep going. I already read it. I already read what Yahya wanted me to read. Going back to AI, it says, this is battlefield spiritual power. Exactly what 1 Kings 8:44 foreshadows. Also, Moses, plagues, parting seas, supernatural signs. Exodus 14 and 21, Moses was also allowed to part the Suez, right? Exodus 17 and 6, waters came from the rock. Remember, he smote the rock. And when you see these miracles take place, you got to give glory to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. He deserves it. Reading AI says Moses is the blueprint for deliverance, miracles, and times of oppression. Also, Joshua. Joshua chapter 10. I think it said 12 and 14. I like this one. I always quote it. Well, I always remember this. This is Joshua chapter 10, verse 12. It says, Then spake Joshua, which is Yahweh Shai in the Hebrew, to Yahweh in the day when Yahweh delivered up the Amorites before the children of Yasharallah. And he said in the sight of Yasharallah, Son, stand thou still upon Gibeon, which that's proof that the sun evolves around the earth, not the other way around. And thou, moon, in the valley of Jalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher, which the modern book of Jasher, we don't subscribe to it. It's been adulterated. It says, so the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hastened not to go down about a whole day. So a whole day, man. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that Yahweh hearkened unto the voice of a man, for Yahweh fought for Yasha'Allah. It says that Yahweh hearkened unto the voice of a man, for Yahweh fought for Yasha'Allah. You know, so now he's going to hearken unto his elect in these times. It says, and Joshua returned, and all Yasha'Allah with him unto the camp to Gilgal. So going back to AI, it says this is cosmic level spiritual power. So if Yahweh Hashem Yahushua could allow someone to stop the sun and the moon, why wouldn't he be able to allow someone to remove a mountain and drop it on somebody, whole city or something? You know, which, you know, of course, you know, certain scriptures are twofold. You know, removing mountains also means governments, but, you know, also not all men have the same faith, right? It says this is cosmic level spiritual power, the Most High altering creation for his elect. You know, so we supersede, well, the elect supersede creation. Y'all, Sharat Zah be part of that number. You know, Daniel's supernatural protection. This is Daniel chapter 3, verse 25. It says, he answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God, or the Son of Yahweh, which was Yahweh Shai. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High power, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Right? It says, then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, blessed be the power of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any God except their own power. You know? And that's how we gotta be, man. We can't be worshiping this damn devil and his gods that don't even exist. It's Play-Doh gods. This is Daniel chapter 6, verse 22. It says, my power hath sent his angel and have shut the lion's mouth, and have shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. You know, so it says, going back to AI, this is the standard, divine protection in the face of death. And that's what Yahweh Shem Yahushua is going to provide, man. That divine protection in the face of death. Now I'm just going to quote these. It says, apostles, healing, teleportation, resurrection. Acts chapter 3, verses 6 through 8. Peter healed the lame man. We're going to be able to heal the sick. Acts 5, chapter 5, verses 15 through 16, people were healed by Peter's shadow. Just imagine people healing just off a shadow. Acts chapter 8, verses 39 through 40, Philip was teleported by the Spirit. There's going to be teleportation that brothers is going to do. I remember I did a video called Absconding, in which an individual had a dream about me disappearing and teleporting away from, danger. And this nigga is in the world, man. And one ill night that I had was, which, I wasn't even thinking about it. But I remember, I guess this cop was trying to pull me over, but the way that Yahweh Shem Shah had me maneuver, which he didn't have his lights on or anything, but I was in a raggedy ass car, so that's the main thing. He was just trying to fuck with me, but the dude was all marveled about, oh, it was like he was all looking for you, couldn't find you. And I was like, yeah, man, it's because I prayed, man. I pray before I get into the car. Protect me from law enforcement, protect me from wicked drivers, and protect me from myself. And so he marveled at that. And then, just to rub it in, on the way, back to my house, I think the same cop was still trying to chase me, man. Follow me all the way to the freeway. I believe they got on the freeway according to him. And I still got to the house safe and sound because of faith. I try not to, as soon as a slither of doubt tries to set in, I always remind myself, hey, you already prayed. Going to AI commentary says Acts chapter 9, verse 40, it says Peter raised Tabitha from the dead. Right? AI says the apostles operated in new covenant spiritual power, the same power promised in the last days. So it says Yahweh Shai, the source of all power. So let's get that in St. Matthew chapter 10, verse 1. It says, and when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power. So it's going to be Yahweh Shai that's going to give the elect power in these times. Against unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. And that's going to happen in these days as well, man. St. John chapter 14, verse 12. It says, verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also. So everything that Yahweh Shai did, those that believe, the elect, are going to do the same also. But here's, what do they call it? A caveat. It says, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. And whatsoever ye shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. Right? And I asked a lot of things in, personal experience, right? One is to be increased, with more of a diligent spirit, man. More wisdom, more knowledge, more understanding, more of that righteous spirit, forgiveness, It says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Keep his commandments to the best of your abilities. But, faith is what's going to be the ticket, man. Because the law is not going to save you. Going back to AI, it says this is the direct promise of spiritual power to the elect. So we're going to be, or the elect are going to be taken care of, man. So how it all connects to 1 Kings 8, chapter 8, verse 44. It says, go out to the battle, Jacob's trouble, martial law, the flood of Esau's system, pray toward the city, faith, calling on Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, covenant alignment. 3, hear thou in heaven, spiritual power, miracles, standards raised, angelic intervention. 4, and maintain their cause, deliverance, victory, the elect overcoming the flood. Why is that? Because they got plot armor, right? GMS style summary, pray toward the covenant, call on the true name, stand in faith, receive spiritual power, perform miracles, feats like Samson, Elijah, Elisha, Moses, Joshua, Daniel, and the apostles, overcome the flood, be delivered by Yahweh Shah. This is the ancient pattern returning in the last days. So with that, I hope at least one brother, the elect, was edified. And I'm going to say, Shalom.